morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Victoria Brown, and you may have spotted me before chairing our peopleHUB events. So this event today is a spin-off of peopleHUB, really. And the reason that we're doing this is that we acknowledged when we did our last session on the Employment Rights Act of 2025 that it is huge, that there is so much information that you need to try, well, we need to try and understand. And it's hard to try and do that in one session. I think it's very overwhelming for everyone. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down some bite-sized sessions for you across the next 18 months. So I'd love your feedback at the end. Let me know if you think this is helpful to you. So the first one that we're doing is on the SSP reform. So these are the changes to statutory sick pay, which, believe it or not, are coming in April. Have the next slide, please, Maisie. So statutory sick pay, the current position. I'm sure you know this already, but let me just remind you of what these changes are. So the current position at the moment is that you can be off sick for 4 consecutive days before you are paid any statutory sick pay. So you have 3 days, 3 waiting days that are unpaid. You also, as an employee, have to meet the minimum earnings threshold, and that currently stands at £125 per week average earnings. And you have to provide a fit note after 7 days. So you can self-certify for that first week, and then on the 8th calendar day, your employee should be providing a fit note. And the current SSP rate is £118.75. So don't worry about these slides as well. If you don't need to take lots of notes, we will send them over along with the recording as well if you find it useful. Next slide, please, Maisie. So what is changing? Well, the key changes is from the 6th of April, so next month, SSP is going to be payable to employees from day one. That is a significant change in this reform. So the removal of the waiting days, the 3 waiting days are no more. So it's very important that you update your policy and your procedures for this. Also, the lower earning limits is going to be removed. So as you recall from what I've just said, that lower earning limits at the moment is £125 average weekly wage. That is being removed. So it means if you are on this session now and you are in hospitality or in another area where you use a lot of 0-hour contracts, then this is going to have a significant impact on your costs. So now lower paid employees will qualify. So the way in which they will be paid is they will either be paid 80% of their wages or the SSP rate, whichever is lower. And the SSP rate, you've guessed it, is going up. It's going up by £4.50. So it's £123.25 that you will have to pay employees on a weekly basis. Now, the rationale behind these changes from the government is that it will improve financial protection for workers, and it will also encourage employees to take time off when they are genuinely ill. And whilst I understand and appreciate that, the reason for this session today is obviously that this will also have an impact on your cash flow, your expenditure, and what we need to really ensure is that we do look at any short-term absences and any casual absences that we can avoid. Next slide, please, Maisie. So this is just, I've just put together the breakdown between the two. So this will just be more useful when you've got the slide deck so you can see what the current SSP rules are and what those changes are going to be. Next slide, please, Maisie. Okay, so what could this mean to us and why are we here today? Well, the possible implications are quite huge, really. So although it's only a small change, legal change, it's actually really important that as managers, as owners of businesses, as HR professionals, we really do take action with this change. So it inevitably is going to increase SSP costs because when people are off for those first 3 waiting days now, they are going to be paid. It's also going to have an impact for people that are paid, that used to be paid below the LEL, because now it means that a lot of people potentially in your workforce that didn't qualify for SSP will now qualify for SSP. Now, obviously, if you already pay company sick pay, this isn't going to have the same impact, but nevertheless, the change is significant. So the likelihood is that we may see an increase in short-term absence. So the people that maybe had a long weekend and thought, you know what, I'm going to have to go into work on Monday because I'm not going to be paid, may think differently now because they may actually decide that they will stay off because actually they are going to be paid something now. So what is really important now is obviously the effective absence management. So if we can just move to the next slide, Maisie, and we'll run through that. So a lot of people are going to talk to you about updating your policies, and your HR consultant or your HR manager is probably already working really hard in the background, because obviously this is not the only change coming through on the 6th of April, getting those changes ready for you. And that's great because you'll have that compliance change. But what I do find with a lot of clients that I talk to is actually the policy and the procedure are two very different things, particularly in absence. So this is a great opportunity for you to have a look. When you get sent through that new policy or in advance of that new policy, read it and actually consider, do you follow the procedure that is set out in that policy? And I would say 8 out of 10 managers don't actually follow the absence procedures that are in their policy and procedure. So it's really important that you've got clear absence reporting procedures in that policy and consistent management involvement. So the bigger your organisation, the harder this gets, because obviously it dilutes sort of that consistency with managers. So as a business owner or a HR professional, that is your responsibility to ensure that we have consistent management involvement through the absence process. I would also recommend having an ability to monitor patterns and triggers. I know a lot of you that are on this session today are 1HR users, or if you don't use 1HR, you no doubt use another piece of software. So there are ways in which through your HR software you can run reports and monitor any patterns and any triggers. And believe you me, you will find quite a few patterns with some employees if you actually do scrutinise that data a little bit more. And regular return to work conversations, which I'm going to talk to you about shortly. Next slide, please, Maisie. Okay, so in your absence policy, what I would absolutely recommend is that you are very clear on how the employee reports sickness, who they report the sickness to, and the window, the time frame. So whether that be you want them to make a telephone call to their line manager before the start of their shift, and any evidence that you require. So obviously that might be medical appointments, fit note after sort of the 8 days. So make that clear in the policy. I would really, really advise, if you take anything away from this session today, please make sure that your employees call their manager or your HR or office manager or whoever it is within that policy. It makes such a big change. And it really is a driver to drop down that short-term absence issue. So not a text, not a message. The amount of managers that I talk to that are okay with somebody texting or sending a message. And the thing is, if somebody is genuinely off ill, it's important that that manager speaks to that person, understands, sees if there's anything that they can do to help as well, whilst they are poorly. But if it is a casual absence, and it is what we talked about before, where maybe you had a little bit too much to drink on a Sunday night and don't want to come in on a Monday, that's a difficult conversation for that employee to have with their manager. So this is really helpful because it supports the people that are genuinely ill, but it also ensures that we eradicate some of this casual absence. Next slide, please, Maisie. So there's a couple of ways in which you can monitor absence, and this again is really, really important. Now, what I would say is, before we look at how we monitor absence, what also is really important is that we record it. And if you're on this session today and use OneHR or use another piece of HR software, then great, because you have got the ability to be able to monitor absence. So it's really important that you do track that absence, not put it on a calendar, a wall planner somewhere. I speak to so many people who say, actually, we haven't really got a problem with absence. And then when actually they start to track it, they may have a couple of problems with absence. They've just not remembered, because we are all incredibly busy people. And a lot of you that are on this session today are business owners. So you're busy running your business fantastically. You haven't got the time for this. So it's easy to do. Just make sure you record those absences. What you can then do is really powerful, because you can run regular reports from your system. So running your monthly reports, I'd recommend, in frequency of absences. And what you need to do is something with those reports. So my recommendation would be to have some sort of monitoring method. And the most popular ones tend to be either trigger points or the Bradford factor. So trigger points can be something like 3 absences in a 12-month rolling period. I would recommend you go with a rolling period for 2 reasons. One is it stops people manipulating the triggers, so they don't say, oh, great, we're at the end of this calendar year, we start again, so I've got 3 more absences I can have next year before HR get in touch with me. Also, from a 12-month rolling period, if somebody has a genuine illness and they've been really unfortunate and they've had quite a bout of illness, then what it does allow as well is for that to drop off them as well, so that their absence records reduce. The other option is the Bradford factor. And this, I find, is a little bit like Marmite. When I talk to people, they either absolutely love it or they hate it. And I sort of sit in the middle with this one. I think it can be a really useful tool as long as you use it properly, consistently, and look at it with caution, which I'll explain shortly. But the calculation around this is on the screen here. You've got your S, which stands for the number of separate sickness instances in a period of time. So again, recommendation is 12-month rolling period. And the D is the total number of days absence during that period. So just to make this a little bit simpler for you, let me just explain and give you 2 examples. So you've got 2 people here. You've got John. John was off sick for 10 days. He just had the flu. It wiped him out. He was really poorly. It was just 1 instance and he was off for 10 days. And then I've got Jack, who was off for 10 days also, but over 5 instances. So on 5 separate occasions, Jack was off sick. So the way this would calculate from a Bradford factor perspective is we'd have John, who was off on 1 occasion. So that would be your S. So that'd be 1 times 1, and then times the days times 10. So that gives you 10, a Bradford factor score of 10. Whereas Jack has been off on 5 separate occasions for 10 days, for a maximum of 10 days. So what that is 5 times 5 times 10. So Jack's score is 250, because what it's demonstrating, the Bradford factor, is that Jack has high short-term absence, whereas John, no doubt, probably just had a genuine illness for 10 days. So it's a great way to just flag if there's an issue. And what you normally have in that policy is a breakdown of what those scores would potentially lead to. And a score of 250 could be looking at sort of a verbal to a written warning, potentially. Next slide, please, Maisie. What I will do is talk to you a little bit later just around some of the things you need to be careful of with using either of those reporting methods. But if you are interested in Bradford factor or triggers, please do drop me a message. I can go into a bit more detail or speak to your HR consultant about them. Okay, so the other thing that is really important, so if there's one more thing I'd love you to take away from this session, it's the return to work meeting. This is, honestly, it's a deal changer. It will make so much difference. Please do try it if you don't do it at the moment, just to see the difference this will make to your business. And again, just from one HR perspective, if you do use our software or you do use another software, there are, particularly in ours, there's a workflow here, so you can put on the return to work workflow, so it will automatically trigger that return to work meeting with the line manager. So the return to work meeting is important, and it's no matter how long that absence is for. I hear so many managers telling me, oh, well, they're only off for one day, so I didn't do that return to work. Or they do the return to work meeting 5 days after they've returned. So the reason for the return to work, there's a couple of reasons. Obviously, one, it's very important because if somebody's been off, you need to make sure they're fit to return. They may be on medication and they may use machinery, for example, so they may not be able to work with that machinery when they return. They may need to be on a phased return. They may not be well enough, or there may be some considerations that you need to take into place for them to return to the business, and have that conversation with them as their line manager. The other thing that's great about this is the point I made before about the telephone call. It's just making it harder for people that like to swing the lead and like to have a casual absence when they can't be bothered coming into work. So it's very difficult for somebody to have to sit and talk to their line manager when they're making it up. So it does make a huge difference. It's such an effective tool. It shouldn't take you long to do. It's really important. So if you do anything, please do start to complete those return to work meetings. Next slide, please, Maze. Just the point around protected characteristics, what I've mentioned before around monitoring and having that sort of clear and consistent process where you have, say if we're going through instances, we're saying, right, if you've got 3 or more absences, we're having an absence review. If we've got 5 instances, we're going to a verbal warning. What you've got to be really careful about is protected characteristics. And I'm sure a lot of you know there are 9 protected characteristics which are identified through the Equality Act of 2010. And absences may relate sometimes to some of them. So you may get disability, long-term health conditions, pregnancy-related absence, mental health. Some of you have been on the sessions that we've had with Miss Menopause, and we understand some of the impacts that can have for women. So you've got to be careful when you're looking at this. And this is why some people don't like the Bradford factor, because you can't, or whilst you need to be consistent, you do also need to take into consideration individual differences and just look out for any underlying health conditions there. And if there is, and you spot something, then please do take advice from your HR professional. It's really important before you go in and discipline or anything. You may have to take that advice and just operate a little bit differently. Next slide, please, Maze. So sort of finally, obviously, as you can see, the importance of the manager in this. The manager is so important. This is really, really key. For me, as we said before, it's a small change, but it's a significant change, and managers and the way in which they behave now is key. They need to ensure that they do follow the absence reporting process. They need to be courageous and say to their employees, no, I don't want that text message. You are to phone me when you are off sick. They need to take the time, 5-10 minutes, take that time and hold that return to work meeting. It will save you so much time in the long run. Also looking at those reports. Now on 1HR, for example, now we have, because of these changes, we have opened it up so managers can run those reports now. So managers can be empowered and run those management reports on a regular basis, so they can take control of any patterns, any issues, any triggers, if you've got some reporting triggers in place, and take that action and hopefully bring about a change. Because ultimately you've recruited these people, you know they're good, you want to support them if they are poorly, you want to mitigate any short-term unnecessary casual absence. And if you are concerned, I would strongly advise you to contact your HR professional. Next slide, please, Maze. So I'm just going to run very quickly, because I know it's a 20-minute session, Just going to jump onto OneHR. Now, if you don't use this software, I still think this is useful for you to see because you no doubt use another piece of software. So just make sure that your software has, you've got this set up. So let me just share my screen. Okay, my screen is over here as well, so apologies, I'm not looking at the screen. So just very quickly, if you haven't got this in place now, check that your software has got this and it's up and ready for April. So first thing and most important is make sure you record the absence. Make sure managers or whoever's recording the absence is well aware of how you do that. So if we're popping in a sickness here, I'm going to pop it in. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to extend that sickness because I've been given a fit note for that period of time. Oh, it's not letting me because it's on the 13th. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. But I can extend that fit note. I can add evidence to that fit note and I can, so that sickness, and I can close that sickness. And what that allows me to do when I add that evidence or I close that sickness is it allows me to be able to look at that information. So it's important to put it in here. There is a trigger as well for sickness absence. So it will notify you on the 8th day to a manager that you need to complete a fit note as well. If I look at the leave, there is the ability in the admin section, as we talked about before, to add in these things that you may not have right now. So what you can do is you can, on the sickness, you can click that you would like the return to work workflow to start to trigger. And you can also click if you want the Bradford factor calculation to work on the system for you. And that is really simple. If you want to make that change, you can edit this area, or if you're adding in a sickness, you've got that ability there to add in that leave type. Then I can run on the report section. So if I've got the report, I can go on the custom data report. I can jump right into the report section. So this is here. This allows me, this is on a 12-month default rolling date range, but you can change that date range to suit you. I can decide on the departments I'm looking at, and I can decide on the leave types that I want to run a report on. There may be other leave types as well, such as hospital appointments or something that you want to have a look at. I can export this. I can share this with other people. Managers will only see their departments, but they can now run their reports in here as well. And it's showing me any patterns. So say, for example, here, I can see that Claire Henning-Marsh has got a massive Bradford factor score, and she has 11 instances of absence. So as I mentioned before I jump into dismissing Claire and inviting her to a disciplinary, I need to just see if there's any underlying issues. So what is great about this tool, and no doubt other HR software tools that you may be using if you're not using OneHR, is you can jump into the employee section. So let me jump into here. I can jump into here. I can pick the date range that I want to. So this will default to the calendar year because that is the way the leave is set up in here. So I can default this to a 12-month rolling period if I want to instead. And then I can look at the absences. So if I look at the absences here, this is obviously why it's important to record it properly, because I can see the duration. The reason is really important. When they phoned you, what was their reason for absence? I can click on any evidence that's been submitted during that absence. And then I can also have a look at the return to work form that have been completed. So very quickly, I can understand what is going on with Claire Henning-Marsh. And my honest opinion on Claire, I can see that there is no underlying condition here. We've got the flu, we've got a stomach bug, we've got a migraine. I think Claire's a bit like some casual absences. So my recommendation to the manager would be that we are inviting her to a meeting to discuss this further, and it may look at like she will end up with some form of sanction. Okay, so that is just a quick whistle-top tour of the software, and obviously there's no doubt if you don't use our software, I'm sure that you would be able to apply that in place with the software that you do use. I hope you found that session helpful. If you've got any other questions, please do. If you've popped any questions in the chat box now, I will come back to you. I will respond to them. And if you do have any other questions after this, we are going to share the details of this session. Please feel free to send it to other people as well. And I will let you know shortly of the next bite-sized session that is coming up in this series. Thank you so much for your time today.